Who's the best show here?
Tech Show! Tech Show! Tech Show! Yeah!
The Linux Link Tech Show is on. Your link to the new Linux and the latest technology. 2 hours of insightful guests, tech info, and playful banter.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Free software, free speech, open technology, and open minds.
I love it.
Now, live from the Linux Link Tech Show studios, here are your hosts, Dan, Alan, Pat, and Link. Link it up and take it away.
Welcome to episode 161 of the Linux Link Tech Show. This is the first episode where we are scattered across the Eastern Coast. Got Link, Pat, and Alan on remotely. You guys are still there, right?
We're still here.
And before we introduce our wonderful guest for tonight, I would like to make a public service announcement to all those people who have been emailing us the past few weeks about how to change the themes in Ubuntu. We know how to change the themes in Ubuntu. We've been well aware of that since we first installed Ubuntu. We just don't like, or some of us don't like,
we would like to make
the brown
fun of it, that's
colored
all.
theme. And I got to say, for all those people who send us the email in about changing it, one thing, we love Ubuntu. And if the worst thing we could say about Ubuntu or any distribution is we don't like the default theme, then you know, it's a great distribution. Right, Link?
It's like most of us run Slackware, except for Pat, but that's Pat.
Well, what are you going to do?
He has to be different.
Dare to be different.
So, Ubuntu, 2 thumbs up.
Absolutely.
For all those people who think we don't like it or bash on it too much. Again, 2 thumbs up. Anyway, tonight we have a wonderful guest, Cory Doctorow, author, blogger, integral member of the EFF, and all-around great guy. Cory, thanks for coming on tonight.
Well, thank you for having me.
And for those few people who do not know who Cory Doctorow is, could you just explain exactly, who you are in the community, not just with the FOSS community, but in the technology community in general, and how you got involved with that?
Well, so I was always geek, and I founded a software company, peer-to-peer open source software company, and got involved with Electronic Frontier Foundation, and went to work for them, and as their American evangelist. I think my title at the time was Director of Outreach, or Outreach Coordinator. And then I moved to Europe to be the European Affairs Director. Most of what I did at EFF was work on regulatory issues as befits free software, open source, and civil liberties fundamentals, free speech and freedom of expression and privacy and so on. My first project was working on something called the broadcast flag. This was an initiative to sneak in a rule about digital television that would basically make it illegal to put components in commodity PCs that were amenable to being modified by their users. What they said was anything that's capable of receiving a digital television signal, including a PC, either one with a tuner card or one that's running something called GNU radios, free and open source software-defined radio, where you use commodity PC components and software to redefine the characteristics of the radio. So depending on what codec you load, it's either a television or a radio or a military radar installation or whatever. So the idea is that anyone who builds a digital television receiver would have to build it so that users couldn't modify it. And we might have to add digital rights or digital restrictions management, stuff to keep you from using the broadcast that you received in the way that you want. So I helped EFF fight that, and although it passed with the FCC, what we did was we made it too hot a political issue for Congress to pass it. So they punted it to the FCC, and the FCC is, really corrupt and captured, and everyone who works there basically knows that the thing that they do after they retire out of the FCC when the government changes is go to work for the industries they're regulating. So they all really suck up, and so they passed this regulation, and then we sued on the question of jurisdiction, along with Public Knowledge and the American Library Association. We knocked it down. Then I moved to Europe and started working on comparable initiatives there. One was at the United Nations. The World Intellectual Property Organization was working on a treaty called the Broadcast Treaty that would do kind of a similar thing but on an international scale. Remember, the way that America got the DMCA, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, is it was initially proposed in Congress, and it got laughed out of Congress, and they went to the United Nations. They turned it into a treaty obligation, and they brought it back 3 years later. They called this policy laundering. So, I was working on this stuff over at WIPO and also working on Europe's equivalent of the broadcast flag, something called CPCN. And we've had pretty good luck. I mean, we basically killed all of this stuff, killed it dead, drove a spike through its heart. It's like a vampire. You kind of got to sew its lips shut and fill its mouth with garlic and bury it at crossroads before it stays dead. But we staked it out pretty good, and it's looking like we're going to make some we're going to keep it dead. Now, I left the EFF last year, and I went off to write full time. The other thing I do is write science fiction novels. They're published by Tor Books, largest science fiction publisher in the world, but they're also released under Creative Commons licenses. The same day they show up in stores, they show up under licenses that encourage you to share them freely. And I've tried a lot of different licenses with my works. Some of them include remix, and one book I've said, if you live in a developing nation, you can make as much money off of it as you want. It's not limited to non-commercial use, but you export it to a developed nation. And I also edit a website called Boing Boing, along with 3 other co-editors. It's the most widely linked to blog on the internet. We have about 2.9 million individual readers a day. So I guess that's kind of my capsule bio there.
And from what I understand, you're an extremely prolific writer. And don't you even have a few podcasts out there based on your writings?
Yeah, I do a couple of podcasts. One is me reading my stories. So I oftentimes it's either stories that I've previously published or stories that I'm working on right now. One your listeners might be interested in is something called When Sysadmins Ruled the Earth, which is about a period after a terrible kind of bio/EMP attack on the world cities. All the sysadmins in the world are in their cages trying to repair a zero-day exploit superworm, and the world becomes uninhabitable, and they just seal the doors in all the cages and wait for their oxygen to run out. It's the last kind of days of the sysadmins as the internet winds down as the generators all run out of diesel. The one that is probably best known, I wrote a story called I, Robot, which is kind of a mashup of Asimov's I, Robot and Orwell's 1984, and it's a parable about digital rights management technology. That story was well enough received that it was a finalist for the Hugo Award this year. I also participate in the Boing Boing podcast. We do 2 podcasts a week. We do one called Boing Boing Boing. It's kind of a best of Boing Boing, and we do another one called oh bugger, I've just forgotten the name. I can't believe it. Get Illuminated, which is where we interview a kind of interesting cyber culture type. Over.
Yeah, over. Sorry about that. I have listened to the podcast, IT Conversations podcast of the speech you gave regarding DRM so many times. It was a fabulous speech, and I'm glad to hear that through the efforts of the EFF and your efforts that you guys have been able to pretty much bury that issue.
Yeah, it's become a pretty substantial issue. So the thing I forgot to mention is that last spring I was awarded a Fulbright chair at the University of Southern California. I'm a Canadian, so they've made me the inaugural Canada-U.S. Fulbright chair, and they brought me to the Center for Public Diplomacy at USC, and I'm teaching a class about DRM this year called Set Top Cop, and I'm writing a book about it, and I think that it's kind of high time that DRM got a book about it, kind of laying it all out in great detail.
Great. That's a great segue into the next topic. How about we talk a little bit about DRM? I mean, most people can't stand DRM. Me personally, I don't want DRM in anything I own. It seems the media companies, no matter what we're going to do, they're going to try to do some kind of DRM, no matter what the people want.
It seems that a lot. There's kind of a split, particularly with the debate going on against the DRM clauses in the GPL version 3, and some of the Linux kernel developers and other people, and some of the even John Mad Dog Hall, who we got to speak with this past weekend, had said that he's not opposed to DRM so long as it protects the individual's rights, but he is opposed to DRM when it's used as a tool by commercial agencies to prevent people from doing or restricting the rights people have of partaking in media, particularly music or video, that they have paid a legitimate price for in a fair way.
So I think that those are two separate issues, and I'll address them separately if I may. The question of the entertainment industry is a really interesting one. So, of course, the problem isn't DRM per se, although no one really wants DRM. Historically, companies have done anti-copying measures in their software, and it hasn't led to kind of a horrible apocalypse the way it has been lately. And the reason for that is that it was never illegal to break DRM. And today, it's illegal to break DRM, even if the reason that you want to break it is for a lawful purpose. So even if you want to gain access to something you have a legitimate right to access, it's against the law to DRM in order to accomplish that. And so that's really changed the balance. And so I think that whenever we start talking about DRM, we need to start from that premise, that the laws changed, the balance changed. The fact that that we think of technology as being neutral is no longer true here, because we have with the Digital Millennium Copyright Act changed the way that technology works to create a right to control interoperability. That's what this fundamentally means. It means the right to sue someone or block someone from making software that reads your data format if you don't approve of it. And that changes the competitive landscape in a way that should be immediately obvious to people who are involved in free and open source software, because, of course, so much of the impetus to create FOSS is about creating interoperable products. So that compatibility right is right down the middle of what the DRM fight is about. Now, the thing about a compatibility right is that it turns out not to be very good for the entertainment industry. So you can see this in a microcosm with the iTunes DRM. A lot of people say, oh, the iTunes DRM is not so bad. I never encounter it. Except in these kind of extreme cases where I've forgotten my login, or I lost a computer and then I lost another one and then another one, or whatever. It's not a big deal. And they're right to a limited extent. It's not a big deal. The iTunes DRM is not really about controlling your behavior. It's about controlling your purchasing. And so what the iTunes DRM means is that if you decide to switch from an iPod to a competing portable player, you have to abandon the investment that you made in iTunes Music. If you spent $300 on iTunes songs, which is, if you think about how much money you spend on music over your whole life as a music fan, it's a drop in the bucket for most of us. So if you spend $300 on your music, and you want to switch to a new player, and the player costs $150, the total cost of the player, if it's not an Apple player, is $150 plus $300 in music that you lose when you switch devices, right? So that's what Apple cares about. They don't really care about controlling your copying, and that's why people don't really run into it. Now, this turns out not to be great for the music industry, because in the music industry's world, they would have a lot of different retail channels, so that no one retailer would be so powerful that they could dictate to the music industry what the music industry could and could not do. If you're familiar with the Walmart story, you're familiar with what happens when you have one giant retail channel. It's not great for the market, right? They get to specify what kind of content you can create. They get to specify how you can price that content. They get to specify where you can sell it and how you can sell it, and so on. The music industry doesn't want this. So Edgar Bronfman Jr. very famously went to, he's the head of Warner's Music, went to Steve Jobs last year and said, I want to do variable pricing. I want to charge $1.50 for frontless titles and 29 cents for backless titles. Try different models. Now, I prefer to pay one price for all of my music, but if we're talking about a market here, it kind of does make sense that you'd have a lot of different pricing models. And Steve Jobs basically laughed him out of the boardroom, because after all, what is Edgar Bronfman Jr. going to do? Is he going to withdraw Warner's licenses from Apple and say to potential Warner's customers, You can only buy our music in DRM formats that won't play on the iPod. You can only buy it from stores that compete with Apple, whose music won't play on the world's most popular music player. So I think that a lot of music and movie companies are starting to wake up to this, and they're trying to encourage technology companies to form, instead of single vendor solutions, these big consortia like Blu-ray and DVD HD, where you have these companies that are kind of bitter enemies of one another, who come to a kind of temporary truce to try to agree on a single standard for their DRM. And the problem is twofold in those instances. One is that they take a long time to come up with anything. This DVD CPCM project in Europe, which is Europe's broadcast flag, has been going for years, and they just can't agree on nothing. And the other thing is that what they end up agreeing on tends to be a lot worse for their customers, because the music and movie industries can play them off against each other and get a way better deal for them, which is always a way worse deal for us. So you look at Blu-ray or DVD HD, these are like two consortia locked in a race to the bottom, right? They're competing to see who can make the worst product, and that's the company that gets the best licensing terms from the studios. And so, those technologies just tend to fail, right? So like the only technologies that succeed are single vendor technologies where they can kind of tell the studios to go to hell and ship something that's pretty customer friendly. And of course, those end up with a monopoly over retail channels. And then the ones that are kind of competitive end up shipping stuff that's so horrible that no one buys it, and so they end up with no market share. And so it's a kind of lose-lose for the entertainment industry. And I think that you're going to start seeing a lot of people trying to figure out how to get out from under the DRM thumb. The problem is that they've joined in this consensus hallucination where everyone from artists to managers to label heads to corporate, all of them have this superstition that DRM is somehow going to be good for their business, even though, of course, it doesn't sell music, right? No one who bought a song from the iTunes Music Store, remember, they sold $1.5 billion worth of music. None of those people bought the music because it had DRM. Right? If there had been no DRM, they wouldn't have sold fewer songs. I think most of us would say our intuition is that they'd sell more if you can do more with the music. So that's
what's interesting is you hear about iTunes, and I think it was Weird Al Yankovic. In an interview, he said that he gets less money from his songs that sell on iTunes than he does through regular channels.
Oh, well, so that's actually a really tight little scam the record companies have got going. That's not really a DRM question, although it is a competition question, and DRM does go to the competition. So here's the deal. If you're a musician, your boilerplate with your record label probably says that you get about an 8% royalty, less expenses, on a sale of music. So if someone goes out and sells a CD, you get 8% of that. And you still have to pay back the cost of producing the CD. You have to pay for the producer and all the rest of it. But 8% is your base rate. Now, on the other hand, if it's a license, so like if your song gets licensed by your record company to appear as a song in a movie or a song in a video game or whatever, you get 50% of the money. Now, when you buy a song on iTunes, they actually tell you you're not really buying it. They tell you you're licensing it, which is why all these statutory rights that you get under copyright, like the right to resell it or the right to loan it out or the right to make fair uses from it and so on, they claim that it's not a sale, but it's a license, and in the license agreement you waive all those rights. But when they go to the musician, they say, oh no, it's not a license, which would mean that they'd have to give them 49.5 cents for every 99-cent iTunes song they sold. They say, no, it's not a license, it's a sale. So they get to have their cake and eat it too. I mean, the bottom line is that these guys are scumbag crooks, right? And they rip off artists as much as they rip off the public. My editor likes to say, just because you're on their side doesn't mean they're on your side. Just because there are a lot of musicians who think that they're standing up for musicians' rights when they stand up for the label's position doesn't actually mean that the labels themselves have any kind of interest for the musicians in mind. There are a lot of musicians who started to say no DRM. There are a lot of musicians who started to say no label. Unfortunately, some of those people are going through the iTunes Music Store who doesn't give them a choice. A lot of people go, oh, you blame Apple. Poor Steve Jobs. The reason he had to break all of his products is because the bad music industry arm-twisted him into breaking his products. If you actually look at what Apple does, if you're a musician and you Apple and you say, I want to sell my music without any DRM on it, they tell you no. In fact, the guy who runs the iTunes program for Apple has gone on record saying they'd have DRM even if the music industry didn't ask for it, because the DRM gives them a lock-in, right? It has nothing to do with copyright. It has everything to do with having a vertically integrated monopoly on music distribution, which, you know, as various mob-run interests who've run the music industry in decades gone by have proved, is pretty goddamn lucrative. So I want to talk about this idea. Sorry, go ahead. Hello?
Go ahead, Pat.
So you see artists, you know, a lot of them are just completely bypassing the regular record company channels. They're going direct to consumer through the internet. You know, they have those horrible MySpace websites. You know, they're trying to go directly to the people that want to hear them.
Yeah, and you know, I think that's a pretty good way of doing it. You know, unfortunately, this doesn't solve I think the big problem with peer-to-peer and music is only secondarily what artists do. I think that the big problem is that the majority of internet users are file sharers, and the way that the law works today, that means that every internet user is presumptively guilty, deprived of due process rights, deprived of privacy, routinely wiretapped. You know, and is liable to have their life savings stripped away by a music industry lawsuit, what people sort of call spamigation, or spam litigation, where they just exploit these economies of scale of suing thousands of people. So I think that that's the big problem. And, you know, musicians opting out of the studio system, well, that's nice. I'm glad for them. But it doesn't solve the problem that, like, 80% of the music ever made isn't available for sale. Those copyrights are controlled by big dumb companies that have are not very consumer friendly and not very artist friendly, and so long as people continue to share those files, and they're going to continue sharing those files, the whole internet is at risk from this kind of, you know, thrashing, dying dinosaur that's you know, determined to take as many of us down with it in its jaws as it sinks into the tar pit. And so, you know, for that reason, I actually favor solutions that are broader than individual action can attain. EFF and a lot of academics and scholars and even musicians and others have started to note that blanket licensing is one of the ways that we often solve these big distribution problems, where distribution suddenly becomes a lot harder to control than it used to be. You know, the big example everyone knows is radio, right? Going from vaudeville or phonograms to radio is going from a model with 100% control, right? You know, no one gets to hear your record unless they buy your record. No one gets to hear your performance unless they buy a ticket, to 0% control, where anyone who's 8-year-old can build a crystal set, which is a little like, you know, your 8-year-old can install eDonkey or eMule or whatever the kids are using these days, can download any song ever played. And the way that we solve that is we didn't say, okay, well, any DJ who wants to drop the needle has to have his lawyer call the studio's lawyer and negotiate at $400 an hour to find out whether that needle drop is going to be a 10-cent needle drop or a 15-cent needle drop. We just create collecting societies, and these collecting societies collectively manage all the songs. They collect a flat fee for anyone who wants to record, who wants to play anything, and they pay it out to artists based on statistical sampling. Now, they tend to be pretty corrupt entities, but there's nothing about them that's necessarily corrupt. I mean, it's the 21st century. We're pretty good at auditing, you know, statistical behavior of network users these days. And EFF and others have called for a blanket license that ISPs could opt into. You know, $3 a user a month, $5 a user a month, and in exchange you get to advertise that your ISP gives you all the music ever recorded using any protocol and any file format for free, right? They paid your license fee, and you know, you can put up super nodes where people can download from to make the user experience better. Peer-to-peer companies can go back to the kind of architectures that they were looking at in the master days, where they were optimizing for user friendliness, not for resistance to legal attacks. And we can really, you know, kind of push the ball forward, and that legitimizes the way that the majority of people seem to want to get their music. That pays artists, whether they're an indie or whether they're a major, they can still sign up to get a cut of that money. And you know, it puts ISPs on the same side as their users and on the same side as musicians, instead of having this terrible world now where ISPs and musicians are kind of on opposite sides, and it's a fight to see which one gets to survive. And, you know, I think most people, if you ask them at the end of the day, would you prefer to have a music industry or an internet? Most people would say internet. So we need to, for the music industry's sake, if nothing else, we get to a place where it's not a choice between music industry or internet, because they're not going to win that one.
So how far are we off from seeing the music industry pulling away from that DRM technology? Because it seems like every time we turn around, either Apple or Microsoft is announcing some new deal they've made with either the record industry or the motion picture industry for distributing audio and video through their proprietary clients.
Yeah, but so long as those remain the tiny infinitesimal fraction of the total downloading activity that goes on, it's not a significant story. It doesn't really matter. I mean, look at the Place for Sure Zune debacle. You know, basically, if you bought a Place for Sure device, you were kind of a sucker. If you bought a Zune, now that they've revealed that Place for Sure doesn't play on Zune, you're not a sucker. I mean, you're like a masochist at that point. So I think that so long as customers stay away from these things in the droves that they've been staying away from them on, it doesn't really. That stuff's not a significant piece of the story. I think that there are lots of ways that you can move this forward. I was actually just talking to a colleague of mine about this, and one thing that we proposed was putting together a collecting society, a real 21st century, totally internetified collecting society that would offer blanket licenses for downloading music that would be for sale to universities. So universities, instead of paying Rhapsody like $6 a month for access to the Big Four's catalog, we'd represent a catalog of artists. I'm saying in this kind of hypothetical Godonkin experiment, we represent a catalog of independent artists, mostly college bands. And we, instead of charging $10 a month a student, we charge 50 cents a month a student. But imagine a collecting society that collected 50 cents a month a student for every student in America, and then gave that back to independent artists, mostly college bands, and conferred on the university an unlimited license for all of their students to download all of that music in any form using any protocol, and to use it in any way, including putting it in student films, DJing it at a student event, putting it in their on hold music, mashing it up, doing whatever you wanted in any kind of university context. I think that would scare the living hell out of the music industry, who right now, their big argument is, should there or shouldn't there be collecting societies for the internet the way that there are for radio? And that would totally shift the debate to how much should collecting societies charge, right? They'd be like 50 cents. 50 cents is way too little. We want $5. And at that point, as Sir Winston Churchill said, we've already established what kind of person you are. Now we're just dickering about the price.
Okay, so now you said that it doesn't, right? It almost doesn't matter, but to me it does matter, because as a Linux user, my options for being able to participate in online music, I mean, there are the independent artists who distribute on Magnitudes and some of the other distribution channels that do not incorporate DRM and provide formats friendly for me to be able to use legally. But there's a vast majority of artists that I really enjoy that the only method I can actually get these songs electronically is through illegal methods, either ripping out the DRM.
You got to buy CDs, or you got to not compensate the artists. I mean, those are your two choices, and it's that's so. Before the term intellectual property was popularized, which was just in the 1970s. I mean, it's an older term than that, but no one really used it until the 1970s. People either talked about copyright, or more frequently, when they wanted to talk about those whole bundles of rights, copyright, broadcast rights, trademark, patent, and so on, they called it monopolies, right? And that's what they are. They're regulatory monopolies, for better or for worse. As an author, I like my regulatory monopolies as much as the next monopolist, but I at least have the guts to call them like they are. They are monopolies. And the thing about monopolies is you get market failures when you have monopolies. So here you have this demand signal, right? I'm a Linux user. Typical Linux user profile is kind of well-heeled geek. The kind of person who's working in the IT industry, tends to have a fair bit of disposable income and likes to spend it on things like media, right? So here you have these people going, please give me the opportunity to send my money to you. And when you have monopolies, the market doesn't respond to that demand signal. The market can just ignore the demand signal. And so you have this kind of vivid market failure. Now, you can buy the CDs in stores, or you can buy them without compensating artists. One thing that some people I know have tossed around the idea of, and it's a nice piece of theater. I don't think it would solve the problem, but it might move us towards a solution. Is setting up PayPal accounts for artists who don't have PayPal accounts, and just saying, I just downloaded your whole album from the internet, If it were on iTunes, I would have paid you $10 for it. So I'm putting $10 in this here tip jar. Anytime you want, you can come and empty it out and have your money. I think that it would be an interesting exercise. Of course, if the tip jar is never filled up, it would be a little pathetic. But if you're relatively confident in your ability to fill these tip jars up with honest geeks who want to pay artists but don't want to have to get locked into kind of crippleware vertical monopolies, that would be a pretty powerful statement, right? Dear Bono, while you were off making sweetheart deals with Apple, we accumulated $500,000 in this here escrow account for you from people who wanted to buy your music, but it wasn't being made for sale in a format that they could consume. That would be pretty tight.
Yeah, well, that would be.
I should mention that at this point, I don't actually work for Electronic Frontier Foundation anymore. I'm not their spokesperson. I'm a fellow. I sometimes get involved in cases, and I'm deeply proud of my association with them. But I'm not an EFF spokesman, and none of this is to be taken as EFF's position. One of the nice things about not working for EFF is you can spitball these crazy ideas. Something you can't do when you work for a law office.
Now, listening to you speak and having read some of the stuff on your blog, and you being a member of the EFF, and then hearing you on Twit the past few weeks that you've been on, I think since like the end of the summer there. What kind of surprised me at first was that it sounded like on Twit that you had recently moved from, using OS 10 to running Ubuntu Linux. And what kind of surprised me at that is having, a kind of an idea.
I hadn't done it sooner?
Yeah, I was a little surprised about that.
Well, I used to dual boot Yellow Dog, and it was just hard. At the end of the day, it was just hard, and every once in a while, and I used to admin. Well, I started off admitting IRIX boxes for an ISP, and then I admin some Linux boxes. But I find, I'm going to be totally straight with you. I find that using stuff that I'm not super expert in makes me feel like a loser. Bottom line, if I can't figure out, as I can't in Ubuntu, and I'm sure I'll get the flood of email you were just describing with your theme change, if I can't figure out how to turn off that thing where when you tap on the pad on your sync pad, it registered as a mouse click, I just feel like an idiot, right? I feel like I'm back in kindergarten. So, I've bitten the bullet. I went out, I bought a ThinkPad. I finally got all my data moved onto it. Exporting it out of Appleverse was not trivial. And I finally got it almost working. I've got Chris DeBona at Google. Used to be a Slashdot editor. He's a good FOSS evangelist. Has been helping me out with this stuff, and he's got me almost running. Within a week, I think, I'm going to be primary Ubuntu user and just carrying around that ThinkPad. And it's come a day too soon. I mean, the Mac's got lots of problems. The hardware I'm using is getting old in the tooth, and I don't want to buy one of those new trusty computing Macs. I think I'll be there soon.
Do you want the answer?
What's that?
Do you want the answer?
For turning off the... No, I'm in the car right now, so whatever you tell me, I'm not going to remember.
I'll email it to you.
Me. Doctorow@craphound.com. Yeah. But there are a million of those things. So I've tried Amarok, and I've tried Banshee, and I've tried a bunch of the other players. But I can't find one that'll let me make a smart playlist out of my modest 5,000 track collection that doesn't take forever to load that playlist. And I want a simple kind of 5-star music I haven't heard in 30 days or more, which is, my standard iTunes playlist, right? Show me the old friends I haven't been paying enough attention to. And you try to do that in Banshee or Amarok. Amarok, I had to create a special smart playlist and then another smart playlist that from that smart playlist. But even that, just slow as anything to open up. So there's some big gaps still. Ubuntu is so much further ahead than any desktop distro I've ever used. But I think there are a lot of people who've become into that kind of utility software. And music is utility software for me. It's just the thing that's always in the background while I'm working. Who find that having something that kind of moves like it's a and slow and where the film's been slowed down when you want to listen to your music is really suboptimal. At this point, I'm going to flush my music collection and switch it to OGS. I'm ready to flush my portable player and switch it to either Podzilla or something running Rockbox. I'm willing to buy any hardware and do whatever it takes to go all FOSS. But it's just hard for me. And I do have some really good geeks who help me out. But there isn't a day that goes by that I don't trade either meals or sleep to get work done. And when you're in that situation, it's really hard to say, well, maybe I'll screw around with getting SSH keygen working, though it hasn't worked the last 20 times I tried it. I got that working last night, though.
You know what, Cory? You're not the only Apple person who's moved over recently. There's actually been quite a few. Yeah, there's also been a bunch of Apple developers who have moved over to Linux side, and there's a lot of reasons why they do it. It's not just the questions of freedom and the whole silo issue with your files. It's also how Apple treats programmers. Changing the APIs, incorporating programs that third-party people develop on their own directly into OS, basically putting them out of business. So there's a lot of momentum behind it, and it seems more and more people are doing
right.
it.
Yeah, and I feel like it's a good time to do it because all Mac users, when I Google up how do I get X to work on Y, I can often find a Mac user who's figured that out. That's often hanging around there. Last week I still haven't solved this. They're getting my address book which is in vCard, to open in Thunderbird. Still haven't gotten that to work. But, I found a bunch of other Mac users who have the same problem. That's a good place to be in FOSS land because it means that somewhere out there's someone working on the same stuff as you. So, I got a pretty high confidence in this. That said, I got this ThinkPad, and I opened the goddamn thing up. And the first thing I found was an acquisition agreement, 8 pages of what I just agreed to by opening the box. And then I turned it over and I found 6 copyright notices on the underside of the computer. Apple, say what you will about Apple, there aren't copyright notices on the goddamn CPU. That's just freakish.
So that aside, how are you liking the Lenovo?
I had a bad stick of RAM in there. It was a pain in the ass. Got it fixed. Now I'm very happy with it. I didn't like Lenovo support. I would say that as bad as Apple support is, and it can be pretty bad when it's bad, the Lenovo support was incredible. I called up. I was trying to figure out. I had never seen SATA before. I'd only played with Mini IDE, and I called up and I said, so I bought this machine and I want to replace the hard drive, and I'm trying to figure out what that connector is called so I can order one of these drives on the internet. And I called about 10 times, and I kept getting transferred out or hung up on or put in infinite hold queues, and eventually spoke to someone who said, that's a Tier 2 support question, but before I can pass you on to them, I need to know your name, phone number, address, zip code, etc. Right? We can't tell you what we call our connector standard without you surrendering your anonymity. And I kind of said, no, I don't think I need to tell you that for you to tell me what that hard drive connector is called. And they said, it's absolutely true, sir. We won't connect you onward unless you tell us. And I made something up, and they connected me. But, that was just surreal, right, to call up a support line with a really bone-simple question. And that's say what you will about Apple, that's a great Genius Bar question. You walk into an Apple store and you go, what's this connector called? And they go, oh, it's SATA. And you go, thank you, and you leave. Right? Lenovo doesn't have anything like that. And I could have posted something on a mailing list or whatever, but the fact that there was just no way for me to get the vendor to support their hardware in this fundamental and simple way was really, really cheesed me off. And that and the fact that they took 6 weeks to ship me the hardware. But that said, the actual box, now that it's in my hands, faster than anything, really rugged. I love that little drain hole underneath. That's for when you pour Coke over your keyboard. There's a drain hole underneath it to drain it right out again. That's badass. I love how easy it is to get the hard drive out. I don't like how hard it is to get the RAM out, that you have to lift the keyboard, but you don't change RAM all that often. I love that there's 2 slots for a hard drive. I've got 220 gig hard drives in there. That's totally cool.
Have you tested out the drain hole yet?
No, not yet. Hey, I want to get back to Mad Dog's point about this stuff, because I think that there's another point about DRM. I think a lot of people on this side kind of miss it when they start talking about DRM, and the way that they miss it is when they start talking about protecting your personal data. And there's one of two cases they raise. The first is the kind of trusted office environment. You know, I send you a document, but you can't print it. And the second one is the hospital that finds out you have AIDS question, which is actually, you know, ironically, these both originate with Bill Gates. But you hear free and open source software advocates citing them all the time. It gives you a sense of how successful the Microsoft PR machine is. So the hospital HIV thing is an interesting one. They say, you know, what if you could cause your doctor to put your media in a DRM wrapper so that you could control and be notified whenever your health records were decrypted, and you could set policy on your health records such that no one could access them without your permission. And, you know, it seems like a pretty good idea, but when you start to think about it, well, there's at least two problems with it. The first is, as Don Marty said in Linux Journal, if you have got a person working at your office who is so unscrupulous that they'll disclose the fact that there's a patient there who has AIDS, but so foolish that they can't remember a single bit of information without being able to save your whole record out into the clear, then you don't have a tech problem, you've got an IT problem, an HR problem, right? But more importantly and more profoundly is, if you could convince your doctor or the IRS or some other entity who has, you know, lots of power over you to take your records and your data wrappers, you wouldn't really have the trust problem, right? Once you've got those people kind of under your thumb, once you've changed the balance of power such that you can specify how they keep their records in their office, you don't really have a problem with them leaking it anymore because you're their boss at that point. But can you ever imagine the IRS letting you control their data format? I mean, when was the last time the IRS said, you know, fill in this form, or if you don't like this form, design your own, right? It ignores the fundamental social problem of privacy and data protection, which is a power imbalance. And technology doesn't solve the power imbalance. Now, the office case is also an interesting one. This is the, you know, you can't print my document if I say you can, or I can revoke your access to the document. People liken this to PGP, right? I can send you a document you can't read unless I give you permission. The difference with PGP in this, though, is that PGP is binary. You can either read a document or you can't, which is to say that I either provide you with the keys or I don't. In this DRM, or what Microsoft calls IRM, Information Rights Management world, if I provide you, what I do is I provide you with the key, but I provide it with you after you provide me with some token that causes me to believe that the software that you're running will discard the key after you've used it to look at the document, and then request the key from me again. What it's really saying is that while you're looking at your document, my document, I get to set policy on your computer. Your computer treats you as an attacker and locks you out of the functionality of its processes, right? Locks you out of being able to modify, understand, improve, and share the improvements on the processes that are used to manipulate the data that originates with me. Well, really, you know, look at today's computer marketplace and say, well, what would happen if Microsoft got the right to sue people who made products that are interoperable with Microsoft Word because Word was being used to protect individual users' copyrighted Word documents? And so they could put DRM on it, and then anyone who broke the DRM would be breaking the law. Well, that's the end of open office. In fact, that's a world in which the fact that you understand Microsoft's data format is no longer sufficient to interoperate with Microsoft. You now have to not only understand their data format, you also have to get their permission to talk to them. And that's a fundamentally different world from the one that we inhabit. Though I have great respect for Mad Dog and for Linus Torvalds and other people who are worried about the GPL v3 licenses on keys, I think that they're missing a big picture that's really important, and that they potentially cut their own throat and damn free software if they embrace a position that says that we want to create a world where computers treat their own users as attackers, where owning a computer is no longer sufficient grounds for saying that you have the power to set policy, understand its working, improve it, and publish your improvements. Over.
So then, I guess your stance would be DRM across the board is not a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say, you know, we can make DRM a little better by reforming by reforming the DMCA, right? If we take anti-circumvention out of the DMCA, then DRM just becomes something that you have to technologically defeat. And, technologically, DRM is bankrupt, right? Saying that you can have a device that will actually keep a secret from the person who physically controls it is just dumb, right? It doesn't work. That's why bored teenagers all over the world, make short work of DRM all the time. The only DRM systems that haven't been cracked are ones that are used as part of a larger system that has another component that's easier to crack. They're kind of like the steel door on the cardboard safe, right? So no one's bothered to go through them because you don't have to go through the door to get at what they restrict access to. You can go through the side, and you see this with like some of the digital television copy restriction technologies.
So, what you bring up, and I agree almost pretty much 100% of what you say. And when you talk on Twit about it, when you talk on our show, and we talk about it, it's almost like we're preaching to the choir. But it seems to me that the majority of the world, or the majority of, the people in the United States or in other countries, really aren't aware of these issues, and pretty much so long as they could do what they've been doing, they don't care. How do we?
Well, I think you're right and you're wrong. Now, I don't want to be complacent about this, but yesterday was the International Day Against DRM. The idea 10 years ago that we would have an International Day Against DRM would have been completely risible. Right? We have gone so much further on DRM than I ever dreamt possible. A couple of years ago, there was some concern at EFF that taking a blanket condemnation of DRM on as if official EFF policy might alienate people and seem extreme. These days, I think if EFF had any position that was less than that, most people would see that as bizarre. DRM is the most contentious issue in new treaty-making policies at WIPO. DRM was the cause of a huge international series of lawsuits against one of the largest companies in the world, Sony, over its Sony BMG rootkit. You've got people all over the world who are starting to say, "What do you mean I can't play my song from Service A on my iTunes B?" That's just ridiculous. It's completely unfair. Region coding is being routinely broken by people who aren't hackers, but just people who are diaspora populations, say South Asians living abroad, H-1B, Bangladeshis on H-1B in America who want to watch Nollywood or Bollywood movies or Lollywood movies. That's pretty wild, right? That's a pretty huge shift. And what's interesting about DRM is that the formats just aren't catching on, right? HD versus Blu-ray. The answer should be anything except HD or Blu-ray. And I think a lot of people are viewing it that way. It's just not getting any traction, and that's pretty cool. I don't mean to poo-poo the idea that DRM needs to be brought to broader and broader audiences, but I think that in fact DRM is being brought to broader and broader audiences. You've got coalitions now working on, for example, there's a treaty called the Access to Knowledge Treaty, which is a proposed United Nations treaty that I've been helping write that would safeguard the rights of people who provide access to disabled people, archivists, and educators under copyright, so that everywhere in the world they'd all have the same rights. And they could, you could scan a book for educational purposes in South Africa and translate it in Haiti and send it to Rwanda, and you'd know that if it was legal in one country to do step 1, step 2 and 3 would be legal in all those other countries because they'd all have signed this treaty. And this treaty is being worked on. It has strong anti-DRM language. And the treaty is being worked on by everyone from the International Music Managers Federation, who represent all the music managers in the world, to Médecins Sans Frontières, in English it's Doctors Without Borders, an international health NGO who are interested in the pharmaceutical and information side of this, to Verizon, a large telco, to Electronic Frontier Foundation and the Consumer Project on Technology, IP clinics all around the world, free software groups, the IETF, Cisco. It's a really broad coalition, right? You've got librarians sitting down next to doctors, sitting down next to telecoms executives, sitting down next to hackers to all come to common cause. Forgive me if I seem exuberant about that, But I think that indicates that we are reaching much broader audiences than I would have ever dreamt possible 4 or 5 years ago.
Fair enough. I hear what you're saying.
Cory, there's a question on the RC. Someone wants to know, what's your stance with Sun's open source DRM initiative?
I think Sun's open source DRM initiative is an arrow in the back to everyone who ever thought of Sun as a friend of open source. I think that, so what Sun has done is they said, well, we can create an open source DRM where the hardware requires that the code be signed before it'll execute it. So we'll show you the code. You can audit the code. You can see what the code does, but if you change the code, it won't execute anymore, right? So although you can see the code, you can't improve on it, and you can't publish your improvements, and the only people who can interoperate with our DRM are people that we give permission to, right? So you still need permission in the form of a signed of a signature for the code before it'll execute on the platform. So basically, it's trusted computing plus open source equals open source DRM. Open source DRM is open source without any of the benefits of open source. It's open source without creating a flexible competitive marketplace. It's open source without creating power to users to understand and improve on the tools that they use. It's open source that guts freedom. And I think that Sun is out of their goddamn minds, and the only thing that I like about open source, Sun's Stream, is that it's going to fail. And, because no entertainment industry exec is going to come on board, because for all that, it's actually pretty flexible, and the entertainment industry is not interested in flexible DRM. So they're not going to get any signatories. I think that, their kind of best case is they get a bunch of people sign up to license their open DRM, and a bunch of companies that sign up to do it, and none of the entertainment companies will license any content with them. They come back and they say, make this more restrictive, and you'll have 50 or 100 companies that are licensing technology from Sun who will all knock on Sun's door and say, make this more restrictive. We can't use this technology you license to us unless we make it more restrictive. I just think it's a disaster waiting to happen. I think it was incredibly naive for them to do it, and I think the fact that they've remained out there is really gross. And the fact that they misused Creative Commons and implied an endorsement by Creative Commons where none existed was really disingenuous. And I just think that there's not a single good thing to say about Sun's Open DRM except that it will fail soon. I'm sorry, was that a little too forceful?
I wasn't quite clear on your position there.
Yeah, well.
Yeah. It seems like that Sun says one thing and does another quite frequently these days.
Well, Sun does good things too. I don't want to poo-poo that. I mean, we have open office because of Sun. We have lots of nice things because of Sun, and they've done some great stuff, and they continue to do great stuff. But this was such a complete betrayal, and it was so misbegotten and ill-conceived that I just don't know how they got to this. It's just a dead end, a blind alley that they've gone down, and I just hope they turn around and get out of it soon.
Well, that's Sun for you.
Yeah.
How would
I when I first heard about this, I said, the easiest way to get Sun to do something really stupid is tell them Microsoft is doing it. Well, how do we compete with Microsoft's DRM? You mean, how will you compete with Microsoft's urge to make products that no one wants to buy? Well, if you insist, I guess you could compete with that. I don't know why you'd want to win that race, though.
Now, speaking of Microsoft, with their new, what was it, the Zoom player, I think it's called. Yeah. Now, word has it that if you transfer files to the Zoom player or from Zoom player to Zoom player, it slaps on some DRM or copy protection on there, even if it's, a non-DRM.
Creative Commons license. Yeah.
Yeah. Now.
So it's actually they've cleared that up. They don't copy restrict it. They don't put DRM on it. What they do is they flag it. They add metadata to it that tells the player to treat it as though it had DRM on it. It's a very, very, very small nuance. And if you think of the system as opposed to the file, then yes, they do add DRM to it because they tell the system to treat it as though it had DRM on it. I don't think that this violates the letter of the Creative Commons license. Like, I don't think that you could sue. I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think you could sue Microsoft for violating your Creative Commons license on this, although the Creative Commons license does say You're not supposed to put DRM on it. The person who'd be putting DRM on it would be the owner of the Zune, not Microsoft. I think that it's right for Creative Commons authors to be indignant about this. After all, Microsoft has said, well, we're going to reorder our entire business around the business needs of copyright holders who say that if you allow for copying, it will endanger our business model. And here you have the creators. Now Creative Commons encompasses more than 160 million works licensed in the last 3 years or so. You have the creators of these 160 million works who say more copying benefits our business model, and Microsoft throws its hands up and says, well, what do you want us to do? We can't just rework our business model just because some copyright holder says we should. Frankly, if Hollywood's ass is sweet enough to kiss, why not ours?
Because it doesn't have money pouring out of it?
Well, I don't think that's the case. I think that if you look at the money that's emerging out of Creative Commons licensed works, there's a fair bit of it kicking around. And Hollywood doesn't pay Microsoft for this stuff. In fact, Hollywood often fights Microsoft on this stuff. One of the things about Hollywood is that they fear single vendor DRM platforms because they perceive rightly that single vendor DRM platforms gain a huge amount of market power over their business. And so in the broadcast flag negotiation, Hollywood's position was basically anyone's DRM except Microsoft's or Philips. In Europe, at the DVD CPCM, it was pretty much the same thing. Anyone's DRM except Microsoft. No one wants Microsoft to be the leader in this. Brewster Kahle tells an interesting story. He's the founder of the Internet Archive and Alexa, and he wrote Waze, the first ever search engine. Pretty amazing guy. He's also an EFF board member. He talks about back in the days of packaged software when people were selling a lot of software in stores. You go into a store and there'd be just shelves of software, much more so than there is today. And you had people who made this software for Microsoft's platform. And Microsoft went around and told them, if you don't put anti-copying measures on your software, your customers will steal you into the poorhouse. And so we got all this crazy anti-copying crap on our software. You buy a copy of AutoCAD, before we could fire it up, it would say things like, please tell me what the ninth word of the third paragraph of the 400th page of the manual is. So you paid hundreds for this piece of software, and before you can use it, before it can be useful to you, you have to answer, you have to play 20 questions with it. No one wanted this stuff, right? This doesn't make the software more attractive to customers. It doesn't sell more boxes. And, at the end of the day, the thing that put those companies out of business wasn't that Microsoft was ripping, or wasn't that their customers were ripping them off. It was that Microsoft started to bundle their products as free add-ins with the operating system, right? So if you were a company like Delrina in Toronto, that's where I'm from. In Delrina, they made, fax software. And so, that seemed like a pretty good business until one day Microsoft shipped Microsoft Fax bundled in with a version of Windows. And after that day, no one ever had to buy a copy of fax software ever again. It was kind of like Microsoft was like a magician saying, look over here, while he picked your pocket. Well, today you've got Microsoft going to the entertainment industry and telling the same story, right? Unless you put us in charge of your business so that anyone who wants to play your music has to get a license from us, then your customers will steal you into the poorhouse. Therefore, you need to make us your sole commercial supplier. And Microsoft is not winning any friends with that strategy in the movie industry. Say what you will about the movie industry, they're slightly less naive than software authors were a couple of decades ago.
Well, that's comforting to know, and hopefully that trend will continue in the near future. Because I don't necessarily want to see them go out of business, but I'd like to see more fair market.
Well, yeah. I think there are lots of nice people who work at Microsoft, and they occasionally do some pretty good work. I just don't want to have to buy a license from Microsoft in order to listen to music. I think that's pretty fair. Nor do I want to have to buy Microsoft software in order to read a Word document. I just think that's not a good world to live in. I don't think that's good policy. I think that having competition, a multiplicity of vendors, a multiplicity of options, and the ability of users to scratch their own itches, and I think that's the most important thing about computers. I don't know about you, but when I first sat down in front of a computer in 1977, I was 6 years old, and we had a terminal teletype connected to a fax. My dad was a computer scientist. when I sat down in front of this thing, I just knew that this was a thing that was going to change my life forever, that I was going to fall in love with this thing, and my love affair was going to be as hot and passionate as anything that I ever cared about for the rest of my days. And that's been the case. And I think the reason it's been the case is because the cost of producing a specialized computer tool that meets just my needs, that is out of true enough or off the mean enough or off the enough standard deviations away from the norm that it directly suits my needs and not the needs of some hypothetical average user. That the computer just enriches my life in ways that I never would have thought commercially possible, and it's not commercially possible. I mean, FOSS is often the story of FOSS is the story of someone out there scratching an itch that's really specific to the scratcher, and the 5 other people who want to scratch it with them. And it's the story of blogs too. I mean, somewhere out there is a blog written just for you. The person who has exactly your interests, writing about it in a way that you find really interesting. No one ever published a magazine for you that way, but maybe they'll publish a blog for you that way. That's a great world to inhabit. And I don't want to inhabit a world where we have fewer vendors and fewer choices and where the barriers to entry are high again. I want to go back to the mainframe world where you couldn't see a screen unless someone wearing a lab coat sitting in a server room agreed to let you see that screen, where you couldn't create a network protocol unless you could convince the sysadmins of everyone running a NOC anywhere in the world to open those ports and let you run that protocol. I like living in a world where a physicist can one day sit down and invent the web.
Well, and does net neutrality have you concerned at all?
It sure does. The problem with net neutrality is, as I said earlier, I don't believe in the FCC as an adequate guardian of our interests. I think that they are so subject to capture that saying, all right, well, before you can change the way the network works, you have to get permission from the FCC, would basically screw all the scrappy little new entrants into the marketplace and further entrench the way that the phone companies work. I think that they would just play them like a fiddle. So I'm not vastly confident in network neutrality legislation as solving the problem, not because I think that phone companies shouldn't be regulated, but because I just don't think the regulators have our best interests at heart. One thing that I think is a positive first step we can take towards network neutrality is we can't fight for network neutrality unless we can tell whether or not it's being violated. Right? We can't have market fights over this where you just say, well, I'm going to use another vendor's product because you've decided to become unneutral, to become biased. And, I don't use biased networks because we can't tell if our network is being biased. So I would love to see something like the Google toolbar that just continuously probed the network, continuously tried to send packets, and compared your results with the results of other users trying to route their packets on different over different protocols all around the world. And I think that would be really, really useful, that would produce a picture that would show you not just whether or not the network was neutral, but whether or not it was well managed, whether or not, there were fiber breaks that were still being advertised as viable routes that were causing parts of the network not to be routable to one another because someone at some knock had sum up his ass. And I think that, if that were a protocol, an open protocol for producing these reports, and there were open data repositories, a tarball you could torrent, say, every hour that would show you what the Internet looked like at that moment, that, whether we had a regulatory solution or a market-based solution or something else entirely, knowing more about the state of the network can only help.
How are we doing on time-wise for you?
It's funny you should mention because I am pulling into my driveway low even as we speak.
Oh.
So I think I've got to say goodnight to you guys. But thank you very much. It's been an exciting, interesting interview. Certainly it was more fun than fighting traffic while, stewing in my own juices and wondering why the people ahead of me weren't driving faster.
Well, that's great. I thank you for coming on, Cory. It's been wonderful. I love your stuff. Guys. And, I hope we've encouraged more people to go out and read your science fiction and your works and listen to your podcast.
Well, that's cool. They can download it all for free. Craphounds.com, like shit dog, craphound.
There you go. Keep doing a great
Good
job.
stuff.
See you guys.
Thanks a lot.
Take care.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Cory Doctorow.
Cool.
Awesome.
That was pretty easy, man. We just let him go.
Yeah, right.
He's always got some interesting and wonderful things to talk
That's
about.
a hell of an interview. You know, you're going to end up with something like that with someone who's written so many books and stuff, though. You know.
Oh yeah, he's a fantastic orator too.
We have him with Jeremy Allison at the same time. I think we don't have to say a word.
We could just start them up and
Just start him up and just
go
walk
get a
away.
sandwich or something and come back and listen later.
Yeah,
That would be cool.
But you know what? I think he's a great guy. Anyway,
That's
let's go on to some other stuff.
Ohio.
Yeah, that was a fantastic time.
Yes, I quite enjoyed it.
I think it was good.
Alan, you shut up. You be quiet. Enough out of you. You've talked too much already.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Dang it.
Now, you guys, your opinion. If the choice came up next year and we could go to either one, Linux World Expo or Ohio Fest, Ohio Linux Fest, what would you say?
Ohio.
Well, the choice is going to come up next year, and we can go to Linux World, well, what they have left of it in New York, or we can go to the Ohio Linux Fest. I'm going to the Ohio Linux Fest.
Unless they want to fly to San Francisco, then we might have to go to that.
I don't, you know what? I don't even want to go to the Linux World Expo anymore, and I'll tell you why.
No one would ever fly us out to San Francisco.
Never
I
know.
don't want to go to the Linux World Expo because they're a bunch of bastards for not supporting the community anymore. I think that's a really cheap and dirty thing to do, especially when the community is what Linux is about. It's the community that's done everything in Linux. And when you cut them out and go to your corporate sponsorship little convention thing, I just think that's the wrong thing to do. You know?
I thought it was great, man. We knew so many people. We had a shitload of listeners show up. We hung out with them Friday night and Saturday. We met a lot of cool people from other shows and people in the community. It really was a fantastic time.
No doubt.
Everybody was super nice to us. No complaints, really.
I dig it. It was a fantastic show. It can only get better. You know what I mean? And it was so good to begin with.
Friday night was a blast, man. I mean, both days were a blast, but Friday night was really great.
You know what's amazing is I think Chris DeBono hung out longer with us than he did actually at the Ohio Linux Fest. He did his talk early. You laugh, I'm being serious. The first talk in the morning was supposed to be Jeff Waugh, and he got held up in he missed a connecting flight. So they had Chris DeBono switch out with him, and he did the opening. And after that first big opening speech, Chris disappeared. I don't know if he got called for work or something. Would be my guess, But he actually hung out with us at Barley's longer than he was at the Ohio Linux Fest.
Yeah. Now, you know what? I wonder, does ShopRat remember if Chris DeBono was there on Friday?
Yeah, he does. He does.
He does?
Yeah.
He was wasted.
I posted the picture on the RC with ShopRat, and his eyes are closing up. It's pretty funny.
Oh, that was hilarious.
Yeah, it was a good time,
Oh, and I want to thank all the listeners
And
who came
Shoprat
out.
says he doesn't know what the pasty face thing I keep referring
The
to
pasty
was.
face.
That was the look around the time of the Mongolian
Oh man, yeah.
barbecue that we were at.
I tell you what, though, if you listen to the talk, like you guys were all eating at the Mongolian barbecue, I ate at Barley's, and Ted Hager had eaten at Barley's, and there was a few of us who didn't eat at the Mongolian barbecue, so we were just hanging out the other end of the table drinking, and I had recorded, and that's what's on the end of the episode that we released today.
Yeah, no
And
doubt.
You can tell we were pretty wasted, man. I was
Linux
freaking
for
gone.
about 4 seconds, and in every other topic in the world, right?
Yeah, we were all over the place. It was pretty. We went from the Kyoto Treaty to the hot chicks in Columbus to DRM. It was all over the place,
yeah.
man. It was funny.
Some good stuff, though.
And for those who weren't there,
having
I know on the other end of
Dan's
the table,
turning
which
Pentecostal.
which wasn't recorded by Pat, at the other end of the table, the talk was primarily around the hot chicks and the ethme pumps that were walking around. And
it's great, the stiletto heels, right?
and they were all coming out of that Pentecostal prayer convention. It was it was amazing. I got to go to
Dan's
that
getting
church.
converted.
Yeah.
Seriously.
I was baptized over there.
Oh man.
Did you convince your wife to run to wear the stiletto heels and the fishnet stockings yet?
I'm still working on that. Hey, Alan, did your wife make it back okay?
Yes, she did. On it, she didn't get to see anybody famous. I don't think. At least she didn't tell me she did. On it, but I guess she got her picture in front of the Timmy Gates.
Oh jeez.
That's great. That is.
She
great.
went and molested Timmy's lettuce at his grocery store.
Oh jeez.
No, I just remember she's in the other room.
I know. I'm going to get beat. I know it's going to happen.
Yeah,
come after you.
Cory's on the chat. Cory showed up on Friday too, and he was gracious enough to give. I think it was Alan, and was it Shop Rat? Was he? Yeah, he was with us and myself a ride back to the hotel, and on the way
we
back,
had to keep you in the car.
I called my wife up to tell her all about the hot women in Ohio, and yeah, she was half asleep though. We should have taken some pictures of those women.
She really didn't hear you then. That's right. That's what you're saying.
And you know what? I saw. You know those three women, the two that looked like sisters, and the one that was wearing the fishnet stockings and the 5-inch stiletto heeled boots at the Mongolian Grill. I saw them the next day at the convention walking around.
Oh yeah, man.
She wasn't wearing the fishnets, but they were all still wearing those high heels, man.
Alan and I followed them around in their little bus when we took pictures of Columbus on.
Yeah, they were all going back. I think that's like they had like a uniform they had to wear, Dan.
Stiletto uniform.
Stiletto heels,
stiletto and fishnet stockings.
Buns or fluffy hair.
The only other people I see wearing that kind of uniform are strippers and escorts. And models who are strippers and escorts.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, definitely a good time. I think we're going to go next year, more than likely.
You think I'll be there?
I think so.
I hope that convention's back too.
Guarantee it.
Well, like I said, if it's the 30th again, though, I got to bring Caroline because I'm not.
That's okay.
I'm not going to be able to get out of anniversary twice 2 years in a row.
I think Carolyn would have a good time. There's a lot of nice places they can go hunt around in Columbus. I already told my wife that if you have to bring Carolyn, that my wife has to come. They can keep each other company because they're not going to want to run around. They're not going to run around doing the Linux track.
No,
like
that's
we are for
definitely
12 hours or whatever.
Just send Carolyn. All should be happy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's 4 there, so
all right, good. She's got to pick.
Gorkon was the man. Props to Gorkon, man, for
absolutely hook us up with a place to stay, and you can't beat that. Have a place to stay that has a Waffle House right in your freaking parking lot, man.
Yeah, the Waffle House went right through me, man. After we ate there, man, I was in the toilet minutes later.
It wasn't. It was the 6 cups of coffee you had before you got to the Waffle House. It went right through them.
Yeah, Gorkon was great, but you know what? We got to tell the Gorkon story.
Yeah, we got the story.
We got to tell the Gorkon story.
You want me to do it?
This is.
Let me do it.
You really want to do? Fine, you can get it. You can get it.
Go ahead.
Me and Dan are in the car. We're driving. We pull into the parking lot, and there's this guy sitting on a rock, at the edge of the parking lot. Dan looks over at him and goes, "Look, it's a homeless guy."
But the hilarious part is you guys were saying that in the first car. I was saying the same.
Alan was saying the same thing to me in the second
and then all
car.
of a sudden you come across the radio. Hey, I think that's Gorkon.
He gets up, he's smiling at us.
Yeah, see that's the thing. When I saw Gorkon, he was bent over and he had some bags around him. So all I could see was
he was bent over looking through the bags.
Bent over
right?
guy looking through these bags, sitting on a rock, and I'm like, wow, it even comes with its own homeless guy. And because this place was like at the edge of town, it was like this set back, and this gas station. It was like a kind of like an area where you'd see like homeless guys hanging out. And
it's like
the moment the moment he looked up, and I said to myself, "That's one clean homeless guy." But and it was Gorkon then, and it's great. He was great.
Awesome. So now Gorkon is our official Linux Link Tech Show homeless guy.
Yes.
from now until forever.
Ted Hager was pretty cool, I have to say, man. He showed
Yes,
up
he
Friday
was.
night. He hung out with us. He was drinking plenty of beers. He actually brought a whole bag full of T-shirts for everybody.
Yeah.
It was real nice of him. Ted's a really awesome guy, man.
Yeah, he is. He is. He was fun. He was a lot of fun.
You guys weren't privy to when Chris DeBonis showed up and Ted Hager was there. He's like, "Hey, Chris, you look like Penn Jillette a little bit." And Chris got pissed, man. Chris DeBonis got really mad at him.
Hey, you know what? I can't say anything but nice things about Chris because when I forgot the stuff back at the hotel and I went back and you guys were like, "Yeah, bring water and bring all this stuff." He helped me carry stuff in. So
That was nice of
Awesome.
him.
he was, because we ended up walking in together and he was a really stand-up guy. Thank you,
He's
Chris.
cool, man. I can't say anything about him. He was a cool guy.
No way, man.
Everybody was really cool. Everybody. Joe Brockmeyer was there. Greg from the Ohio Linux Fest people. He showed up. Aaron Newcomb from the
Yeah.
Source. He was awesome, man. He was sitting right next to us at the convention, but we hung out with him Friday night, and then he was sitting next to us on Saturday. So we decided, let's combine our efforts a little bit, and
Yeah,
we got some
definitely.
interviews. And 3 of the ones that were on today's episode that were released are with him. Those 3 will be on the next episode of The Source. So you'll get to see myself, Link, and Dan all squirming in front of the camera.
Yeah, and also, who else was there?
You-
Judah and Jordan and
Shoddy,
Shoddy.
Shop Rat, of course.
Shop Rat. Yeah, he was there in spades, man.
That's right.
And what's his name? Gomer X was there,
He showed up on Saturday, Gomerix.
and who was the sushi chef? Damn, I can't remember his name now. Because I'm horrible with names. But yeah. And if I forgot your name, man, or we forgot your name, apologize. We really appreciate it. So, who was the guy you were talking to for like ever, Allen?
He was talking to Joe Brockmeyer.
No. There was I thought a guy, an older guy and his wife came around, and I thought,
Oh, yeah.
Hillbilly.
what?
Hillbilly Tech.
Hillbilly.
Billy Tech was
Tech.
there. Yeah, he was. He was a
Nice
great
guy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he,
very nice
Guy,
person.
too, yeah.
he came up from what, Tennessee?
Yeah, but-
Was it?
Yeah, Tennessee.
Right.
Him and his wife, very nice people, man.
You know what? I'll tell you what. This was, bar none, was the best damn show I have ever been to. And we've been going to quite a few of them, right? Dan, when did we start going to Linux World?
Too long ago.
Time
Wow.
ago,
Yeah, we
right?
said
Like, we're not talking just Linux World. We're talking like Linux World. We're talking Mac World Expo. We've been to
What was that net one that we went to?
that we've gone to and stuff like that. And this, like I said, bar none, this is the best one I've ever been to. And boy, if you guys missed it, please plan on going next
Yeah,
year.
definitely, man. Ohio's a good spot because it's very central located in the United
Meet
States.
us there. You'll have the time of your life. It was really cool.
And we got to meet the. There's an. I don't know if it's ever going to take off and go any regular, but what was it? The Northeast Ohio Open Source Group, Noose. Was there? They have a radio show.
Right, their little radio show that they do every once in a while.
Yeah, and I believe that whatever they were recording there is going to be available.
Broadcasting live, right?
Yeah, but
I
they
think they
also
were recording too.
recorded it, I believe.
Yeah, they said they had 9 hours of recorded material. That's a lot, man.
Yeah.
That's a little bit to sift through. Huh?
Yeah, for one day.
But hats off to the to Joe and what was the woman's name who organized it all?
Beth Lynn. You can
Beth
hear
Lynn.
Beth Lynn while we're talking the Mad Dog Hall, and Beth Lynn comes over. She was like pretty fried, man. She was like going on like zero sleep. She pretty much ran the whole show for those people, and she comes over to Mad Dog over talking to him in an interview, and she's like, "The Penguins are not going to make it," but they eventually did make it. They just late.
Yeah. Yeah, Mad Dog's speech was really good.
Yeah, it was
Yes,
good.
it was.
His closing speech, I really enjoyed that. I'd like to get him on more.
Did that recorded
What?
on the Nokia, but I've got to get it. I've got to re-record it because the format that they have, I can't read in. So I've got to get a little cable and record it onto an MP3 player.
Ah.
It's not really that great a sound because we're in the back of the auditorium, but you can still hear them.
Cool. Well, I think somebody else was doing recordings there too, weren't they?
Yeah, didn't somebody say they were recording
Somebody
all
said
the
they were
talks
doing all the
anyways?
conferences, recording
Yeah.
all the conferences.
So you can probably wait for that.
Conference
to get it all
talks?
better, yeah.
Yeah.
At least I hope somebody did, because, you know, there were so many cool conference tracks going on. And, you know, they're all going on at the same time. Of course, we were busy talking with people and doing interviews and stuff like that. I had a chance to go to any of them.
You know what was really weird was, like, you know, in between the talks, the floor was just packed full of people.
Oh, yeah. It was jammed.
But, like, as soon as the talks went in, the place cleared out. You actually walk across them.
And then when we had the auction, Prentice Hall gave us...
Oh, yeah, I wasn't there for the chairman. That was an awesome
Oh,
chair.
you see the picture? Wait till I have more pictures from Alan. I'm going to put them on the website.
Well, we'll have to play that chair again in the future episodes. Man.
Definitely.
Yeah, there was a couple of the pictures came out a little dark, but you can still see everything.
The aisleway where we were
Had to be
was
about 60
jammed tight.
60 or
You
70
could
people.
not get through there. There had to be like 70 people there. There had to be. I still haven't counted all the tickets they bought yet. That's going to give us a good estimate.
Yeah, that was a good chair, man.
I think we gave out more
Little
tickets at
editing,
the Ohio Fest than we did at the Linux Fest, didn't we? No, that can't be right.
Oh, man.
Oh, without a doubt.
Per day.
Without a doubt.
We definitely had more people show up for the drawing at the
Yeah.
Ohio.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
It's like a sea of standing up on. It's a sea of people in front of me.
People that showed up for the drawing.
What was odd, though, is I think a significant portion of people that won were listeners. And in fact, I think 2 or 3 people that won stuff actually I went out to lunch with.
Right.
That was a fix, man.
Well, yeah, it was almost like it was fixed, but it really,
Yeah.
it was
And you
no
know
way
what? Dan
fixed.
was the
but-
one drawing the tickets too.
And I was like, wow, all these people who won, they're like, hey, I went to lunch with you. So it was pretty ironic.
Yeah, you're not supposed to tell everybody that, Dan.
Well, no, you know what? It was not. I mean, everybody
looks
saw
like
me
it's
there
set up.
shaking the bag and pulling my hand in and pulling the tickets out. I mean,
Oh yeah, I know.
everything was open there. We pulled out like a bunch of tickets that the people weren't there though either, or maybe came late.
Oh, we must have like 6 for people that weren't even there.
Yeah, I'm not. Did we ever have a hit on the first try?
Yes, a couple of times.
Yeah, we went. You guys ate. You and Alan ate at the convention center, Link, and Pat
Right.
and I and a bunch of other people went over there, and Aaron Newcomb and went over there to the north. What was it? The North Gate.
North Market.
Yeah,
It
North
was the
Market.
North Market. It was awesome, man.
Yeah. I was surprised how low key Columbus is.
Lots of bars, man.
Yeah. I mean, roll in there at what? We came in around what?
2-ish.
2-ish, and we left for the meetup around rush hour, and there was like almost no traffic.
But I think it's more location than anything else. You know, the way we came in, and we came right in. One single road, right up High Street.
Yeah, nice
Like
easy to
a
get.
lot of the traffic in Columbus is confined to like the Beltway and 70 and stuff like that.
And then Link got to go visit his old stomping grounds Sunday morning. You got to repeat that because you were just all chopped up there.
So it looks like an atom bomb went off in that place.
So was anybody
I
living?
tried to get. No, there's nobody there anymore. I tried to get Joel Gorkon to go over and take pictures for me a while back, but like he's too much of a pussy chicken shit to go do it.
It's not bad.
But no, well, it has a bad reputation, right? But when we went over, Alan and I went over and looked at it. Apparently, what had happened. This is a giant apartment complex we're talking about, right? Right. Apparently, what had happened is everybody had moved out because they lost their subsidy housing agreement or something like that with the city, and it's been like all vandalized and stuff, and all the windows are knocked out and stuff. It really looks like you're driving into Beirut.
South Bronx.
It's absolutely incredible. Like I've never seen anything like that. At least not not off of the news. You know what I mean? But it was pretty funny. It was pretty funny.
Yes.
Overall, 2 thumbs up, man. Ohio rocked.
Absolutely.
On other news, Slackware 11 has been released.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is anybody running it yet here?
I just downloaded it this morning.
I haven't put it on anything yet myself either. Just haven't had the time.
But, hopefully it's going to rock as much as the other versions rock.
Yep. We're trying to get Pat V to come on.
It's
He's probably passed out from working his ass off.
I wouldn't doubt it. I would not doubt it. He's a busy guy. But yeah, definitely. If you are out there and are curious about Slackware, 11 is now here, so download it. Get it now. Actually, go order a subscription to it so you get it in the mail. And support the Slackware project.
Is that what you do, Dan?
I did have a subscription to it. Now, I wonder if I'm still going to get it, because I never changed my address. I'll have to look into that. There was kind of a mix-up the last time Slackware came out. And they sent me They sent me one copy and accidentally billed me twice. And I called them up about it because it kind of happened at a time when we were really low on money. And I was like, could you get one of those reversed? And they reversed both of them, which I did. I only wanted one reversed. And I might have gotten bumped off the list by accident because of that. So I may need to resubscribe. But it's, definitely worth it. Slackware rocks.
Just haven't had time to install it anywhere yet.
Yeah, you guys.
And, for all of you who put Slackware down, it makes the best damn server that you could ever use.
Yeah, Slackware. And speaking of Slackware, I got GLX. Wait, yeah, XGL. I'm sorry, XGL running on Arch last night because I didn't have enough. Because I didn't have enough things to do with working on the Asterisk issue and then having to get the show out. And I figured why not do
it's still painful to me.
XGL. And you know what? I'll tell you what. I've heard how easy it is on Ubuntu and some of the other distributions. Under Arch, it was so easy. I just put that repository in there, did Pac-Man, pulled down the files that I needed, and then just ran start GLX. And, I had GNOME running with, the wobbly windows and the cube and all those. And, you know what? It is so beautiful to pull up a movie and set the opacity for the movie to 25 or 50% and move it around the screen and see all your stuff going on behind the movie while the movie's still going on and have no artifacts or anything. And, you do the cube thing where you have the movie on one screen, half on one screen, half on the other, and it just wraps around the cube. I mean, that's just cool. It is cool.
So did you notes on how to get that stuff running under Arch real easy?
Yeah, it's on the how-to. I mean, like I said, basically, you add the repository that has the XGL packages in it, and you just do Pac-Man, SYU to update to get all the updates that you have, though, so you're running the most current, and then you just, do I think it's the compiz and some other file. You bring down your X server, you run start GLX, and you're up and running with it. I mean, there's probably more tweaking you could do, but that's how easy it was.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you know what? Two things I want to say about Arch. One, and I think you have mentioned this in the past couple weeks. For some reason, I don't know what has happened, but in the past couple of months, that extras repository has been dog slow.
Yep.
To pull files off of. I don't know what happened. The regular Arch repositories, no problem, but the extras, whew. I started that last night when I got home from work, and it was still going on after I got done talking with you guys with the Asterisk stuff.
Yeah, man.
I went to bed after I talked to you guys.
Yeah, that was...
I I was out like a light about 10 minutes after that. I just gave up.
Oh.
We were having some issues with Astros hooking up the SIP phones to Dan's new setup down in Virginia. We were able to connect and dial in. It's just that we couldn't, when we talked, he couldn't hear us.
You know, the other,
You're cutting out there, Alan. Hold on. Now, say it again.
I tried connecting it earlier this evening directly to my cable modem. I still couldn't get through. It dials in. It seems to register and everything, but
If that's the case, then it has nothing to do with the firewall. It's probably the configuration of the actual phone. Then we're missing something.
yeah, there's something that is just not set up right, and we have to sit down and take more time to figure it out.
Alan broke it, the bastard.
Could be that. I don't know. Well, worst case, I'm going to hand the phone back to you, and you hook it up in your system, and tell me that.
I can. You know what's funny? Here's what's funny about Alan. I keep telling everybody I have this, possessed server at home. My Answers box is possessed. It's been behaving itself lately, but like Alan's air network is possessed. Over. Absolutely default set Linksys wireless router today. He plugged it in his network. When he plugged in his network, I can't get to my website.
Well, we can get everywhere else.
But we can get everywhere else. When he puts his router back on there, we can get to my website. My router with the default config, no website. His router that doesn't work for anything else. Could get away with. I don't know what the hell's going on, man.
You know what is interesting? Is for some reason Skype is starting to flake out. Might be because we're on so long. And what it sounds like is when you guys are talking, it's got that like cutting out, so it's like you're like like that. And while it's doing that, it for some reason, it's bumping the record volume up in Audacity. It's really weird. I'm watching the Audacity record volume go up as it's doing that.
You want to hang up and call us right back?
Yeah, I'm going to do that. So I'm going to refresh it. I'm going to hang up right now and call you right back.
It's Alan's possessed network doing it to you.
It's really weird.
Not mine, it seems.
All right, here I am. I'm going to call you guys right back. Fun stuff.
All right.
That was fast.
Yeah. I got to give props to the bandwidth over here now. I mean, it's like getting some good bandwidth.
You're cooking now. You got like 10 megs down or something, right?
Well, it's 5 megs down and then 2 megs up.
That's
I
awesome.
can't say that we've heard any crackling or anything this evening.
So
No,
Really?
the only sound issue was when we were talking to Cory at first, but I think that had to do with the fact that
I
it was
think
on a
it
cell
was
phone.
a cell phone.
And which actually got better as it went along. It sounded
Right.
decent.
It's doing good, man. It's nice.
Yeah. So I wanted to bring up one more issue about Arch that I find kind of troubling. Is for those of you who run Arch, if you ever do like you upgrade all your packages, and for some reason like every couple of weeks there's a new version of the kernel out in Arch, and they keep switching between make init RD, then make RAM RD, and now they're at the make CPIO RD. And,
Right.
And every time that changes, you got to be careful that you have to change some other stuff, like your Lilo configuration or your Grub configuration. You might have to change. They've been doing some dbus stuff that came down, and it tells you to add a certain configuration into your your xinitrc script to take advantage of this. And the thing is that when you do the upgrade, as it's upgrading, you see these notes come in as it's upgrading these packages, which makes it really difficult if you were to ever set up Pacman to auto-update itself through a cron job in the middle of the night. Unless you're like outputting that, or you're piping the output to a file, you'd miss all that stuff.
And speaking of that, I wanted to get a hold of you sometime because just as you mentioned that, the day before we went to the Ohio Linux Fest, I did just that. I upgraded my Arch server, the one that I've been
Nothing like doing it at the last
yeah,
minute.
I was looking around and playing with. I upgraded it from work, and It did just that. It updated the kernel and changed something around somewhere and completely hosed the box. The damn thing will not start at all now. And if I put it on, like if I put the Arch CD in, for some reason I must be doing something wrong. I can put the Arch CD in, but I still can't start the damn box up. You know what I mean? I could start it off the Arch CD, and it runs the installer script every time, even past root back, the root directory structure back. It's really strange.
See, I believe the way I used to fix that is, you do it and you cancel it, you exit out of the startup script, and I've gone in there and then you gotta. There's a way to mount the proc and dev and into a.
Do like CH rooted or something like that.
In there, and then fix all your stuff and run Lilo again.
Well, I'm running grub on it.
Or fix, if you're running grub, you should be able to actually get in there and edit the grub configuration right at boot.
Yeah, but I've tried that 3 or 4 times, and what it comes up with is that I can't mount my file system.
Can't mount
the kernel. Yeah, it's almost like the kernel that it installed on there doesn't have support for ext3.
I would suspect that's
crap.
because it's not running. If it was just the other day that you did this, the actual init.rd file has changed, and the init.rd file isn't called. Let me actually look. I'll tell you the exact name of the new file right now because I just did this last night, and it's called kernel26.img, and the old one was called init.rd26.img.
Right.
So I believe it's the new kernel, the 2618 kernel that you have upgraded to requires that kernel26.img file. So instead of the init.rd.img, init.rd26.img, just change that to kernel26.img as it's booting at the grub prompt. Should allow you to go right in there and configure it and edit that configuration, and that should get you in.
Well, we'll have to go over that later, but just
Did you get that all through your decoder ring?
Just as a note to anybody running Arch, man, be careful this last upgrade because I've been petrified to upgrade my workstation because I don't want to have to end up redoing everything or something like that. Just the whole server up bad.
You know what I can say to you for that, and this is what I did the first 2 times that I had this happen to me in Arch.
You've had it done twice. It's happened to you.
Yes, I've had it. I upgraded.
Well, man, I'm gonna give it.
What?
I'll let it do it this one time. It happens again. I'm back to Slackware, man.
Well,
Screw that.
I learned my lesson, and what I did was I installed an older kernel package. So I installed I think I have I'll tell you exactly what it is. It is a 2615 kernel I installed on there, and the modules for it. So, and I have it set up that if for some reason I forget to make a change and don't change Lilo so it boots a newer kernel, I still have a stanza for the the 2615 kernel that I can boot into and rerun Lilo and make the necessary changes. So it always helps to have an extra kernel laying around with the libraries.
Yeah.
So you learn
something.
But I hope they get that fixed one day because I guess it's because you get spoiled by Debian and Ubuntu that automatically do that.
Well, I tell you what, if I can't get this fixed, they're going to get a lot of bad press from me.
And speaking of package managers and being spoiled by Debian and Ubuntu, I was listening to the Lot of Linux Links show today. I think it was either the latest one or the one before the latest one, where he was going off that he was pissed that it took Yum 5 minutes to update and then start pulling down the packages from the repositories. Did you hear that one?
Yeah.
That was the same. That was the same one where his wife kept calling him. That was hilarious.
Oh man.
That was
good stuff.
Yes. Excellent job, Dave Yates. Excellent, top of the line, top notch.
Dave has a great show. You know that?
They all do good shows, man.
Yes.
Chess has a great show.
They're all good shows out there.
Yeah, I pulled down the Ubuntu podcast. I didn't realize how they were pretty far up in the episodes there. They're what, like almost 20?
15, 16, I think.
Yeah, and I got to get them on the list. I wanted to check out the GNOME podcast too, but I couldn't find an RSS feed for them. It seems like you have to pull down the files individually.
There's also the podcast, too.
Yeah, I didn't get the chance to go over there and look for that. Not yet.
So who gets relegated to the inactive list? Linux Cult, VLUG.
Yeah, I think those two, and like I said, I gotta update it, but whew, I don't know. I just want a day off. I want the weekend to come already.
Yeah, you got to be exhausted, Dan.
I am. I'm beat, man. Driving back through Ohio and then leaving to come down here the next day and then starting work and then, being up late last night with all that was going on. And
how is the new job?
I'll tell you what, it is working in a school district. Didn't know how spoiled I was with regards to like benefits and everything. It's just like,
you're getting private sector benefits now, aren't you?
Oh, it's a whole different world. I'm like,
but God, they pay me now.
Yeah, exactly. Now they pay you.
But yeah, I mean, I don't get vacation
go to
days.
The doctor again.
I don't get vacation days until after my first year. Yeah,
that's in most places.
I only get 6 holidays. 6. What's up with that? I used to get that whole break off between New Year's and between Christmas and New Year's and
welcome to the real world.
Yeah, I know,
right.
man. I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Gotta work for a living now, buddy.
Oh, it's abuse.
That's what I keep saying every time I see my paycheck too, Dan.
It's yeah. But it's weird, trying to get into into a whole different, whole different environment, whole different lifestyle there, and a whole different working environment.
Yeah, but I noticed that you were crack of dawn this morning. You were right on your IRC.
Yeah, no, that was the AIM. They have AIM over there, so I was on game.
So yeah, your company does the same thing mine does. They communicate with everybody on instant messaging.
It seems that way. Because, you go in there and you read, you get that, in the orientation, you get the technology, hardware, software, rules, where they're like, we only support these and you can't install anything. And then, I'm talking to my supervisor and stuff like that, and they're like, well, yeah, everybody I said, I noticed that you guys use AIM here. You communicate with AOL Instant Messenger. He's like, yeah. And I was like, and then they're talking about Firefox, and I'm like, I don't have Firefox on mine. They're like, well, just go ahead and install it. So, I'm like, was that okay? I mean, they're not going to care, but, they're not going to support it. So, I'm like, I got Firefox now. I'm like, so what about, Outlook? I said, I have never used Outlook in my entire life. And I'm
right.
like, and they're like, I said to them, I feel like I'm going backwards here. And I said, do they
doing,
huh?
Right?
What?
When you're coding, you're doing PHP code on a LAMP server.
Yeah, PHP on a LAMP, but the company isn't.
They're making you run Windows Desktop or something like that.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Oh,
so apparently what it is they run Outlook, but they don't have an Exchange server, which means that I have, no problem replacing Outlook with Thunderbird.
Mm-hmm.
So I have that, and then I got Sigwin running because I need my tools. The only, big piece of software that I see that I'm probably going to be using that's closed is, aside from Windows, because I can't. I even said, hey, then when can I just install Linux? And they're like, well, they're not going to support it, and you got to ask them first and everything, because apparently a couple of guys asked, and they said that they'll take care of it and support it, and that was okay. And then a couple more people just went and did it, and I guess that frosted some people, and now you can't do that anymore. but maybe in the future, who knows? Anyway,
You might want to just drop a note to your people and see if you can, once in a while bring your laptop in and try that out or something.
they don't want any outside. You know how it is in the corporate world. Anyway, they use Zend. Been using Zend, trying to get my head wrapped around that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's tough. Because you sit there, you're used to using like VI or JEdit or Bluefish or something like that, or like a simple kind of editor like that. And then you're presented with something like Zend, which has all these gobs and gobs of features, but you still sit there using it like just an editor.
Right.
But it has all that like auto completion stuff for you, so you open up a bracket or a parenthesis and it closes it for you automatically, and it puts you in between the brackets so you can type your stuff in. And then sometimes you want to be finished with what's in the bracket, so you got to move the cursor over, but it highlights the bracket, but your cursor's right next to it, but it looks like the bracket's highlighted. So if you think that, well, if I type something, I'm going to overwrite the bracket, but you don't because it puts it right next to some. I don't know. It takes a little bit getting used to.
Shit gets in the way, I think.
But, it looks pretty cool, but we'll see. We shall see.
Yes, indeedy.
Oi, oi, oi. What time is it? Oof, getting close to quitting time.
1 minute to go. How about
Almost.
some Frapper shout-outs there, Pat?
Okay, let's see who we have. Like the look of Frapper, I have to say.
Yeah, John Watson was complaining about that, too.
Yeah, I'm not crazy about it. Let's see, where are we? Kevin Vidamalski from Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada. We've got Reed Ransom from Santa Monica, California. Richard Eaton from Redditch, England. We've got John from Grosse Pointe, Michigan. We've got Regina Wagner from Mission Viejo, California. Brian from Brunswick, Ohio. And Luca Gasparini from Italia.
Is that it?
That's it.
How many
Everybody,
does that
you're
put us
new
up
to the
to
show.
now?
Please come by. Put yourself on there.
Yeah, how many does that? 90 something.
791.
We need 1,000
We need 1,000 people.
Gotta get 1,000.
Get a friend to
Come
listen.
on. You listen to us and you haven't put yourself on the Frapper map yet. Just mosey on over there.
Force a
and do it.
co-worker to listen to us.
Yeah, that's right.
Actually, we got an email about listening to us at work. Probably not a good idea.
I don't know. I think we were pretty clean tonight.
We were fairly clean.
It's because we didn't do any talking.
But you know what? Even so, listen. I've heard people ask over and over and over again. Is it clean for work? Can I listen to it at work? Absolutely, you can listen to it at work. You can listen to it in church. Bring a pair of headphones. Okay? Use your headphones at work to listen to the show. That way, if we say "fuck you," no one else hears it but you.
Hey!
We were
There
so
goes
good
our
today.
explicit tag.
That's it.
Ay, ay, ay.
Listen to it. Just bring headphones and do it. And then that really doesn't matter what you in the show. You can just revel in your individual personal space
Yeah.
and do your stuff.
Yeah.
What Dan said.
Hey, you know what? Just wanted to make mention, just like Alan had his...
never, ever follow
yeah,
a
yeah.
link that Dan leaves you.
Yeah. I just wanted to
Never.
say that just like Alan had his anniversary this past weekend, today was my anniversary. I got to see my wife all of, half an hour,
Hey,
As I
happy
came in-
anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
and sat down at the computer to figure out what's not working. But I guess if you want to help the tech show, send your ideas on how we can do the NAT traversal or whatever might be causing problems with our Asterisk system as to why Pat and Alan can't connect. But hey, you know what, Alan, were you able to connect with SJ phone yesterday at all?
It connected, but we didn't hear anybody. We didn't hear anything.
I thought we had it working that you can hear, and because unless that must have been when you were on the phone too.
That was IAX phone that we had that I could actually hear. That's what I called you on earlier tonight.
IAX phone works, but
Right.
so it's got to be something with the SIP ports.
It's something with the port forwarding through those like Linksys boxes or something.
But
I'm
Alan
telling
said
you,
he
if
connected
we-
it directly to the internet.
No, I connected directly to my router tonight, and actually tonight I didn't hear anything.
What? Maybe
I
it's
know
your router that's getting
I-
weird or something.
Well, no, when I connected to the cable modem, I didn't hear anything. It will dial in because I called and got myself in on the cell phone into the conference room.
What did you connect directly to the
phone
cable
itself.
modem? No. You can't try the phone. You got to, because we don't know if the phone has the right configuration. You got to try your laptop directly to the cable modem, running like SJ phone or something like that. I bet you'll hear everything then.
Well, that'll
and then
be
we'll just have
tomorrow,
to
probably.
figure out what the problem is with the
Because
SIP
I know
phone.
I know it dialed into the it got into the conference room.
Mhm.
I couldn't hear anything with the phone itself.
Because I'm pretty sure that there's some kind of wonky routing problem going on, and if we set you up a nice little server hanging right off your cable modem like I do, and use NAT through there, IP cables, you'll be golden because it works on my end.
We'll figure it out. Just give us a few weeks.
Eventually.
Months. Years.
No, it's not going to take that long to do.
Anybody that has some really nice SIP phones, they want to send us some, you go right ahead. We'll try them too.
Yeah.
That'll be cool.
Yeah. Well, all right, I'm going to go wake up my wife now and have her bitch at me.
Right.
I'm going to play out. Want to apologize to Open Country. I forgot to play it at the beginning of the show. I'm going to play it at the end here.
Play it at the end.
And I will definitely make sure I put it on at the beginning again. But thank you all for listening.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
The Linux Link Tech Show is proudly sponsored by Open Country, providers of
Or-
OCM, award-winning systems management software for the Linux enterprise, and exclusive sponsors of the Webmin Project.
So we can paint anything we want?
Anything at all.
How about if I paint your fine ass? Yeah, with my tongue brush. Shut up. Just shut up. It's over.